and some playing the role. But you can also see this Mars is over here in Cancer, so there's less energy for her role, playing her
Right.
role, you know.
Right. So what that
Um,
means for people watching is that when Mars is in the sign of Cancer where it's really weak, it means that she gets tired out by things more quickly than if Mars were in a stronger sign.
mhm, yeah, less wanting to do it, and less interested in putting energy towards addressing problems. You know, she would just rather not have those problems.
Right. You know, it's funny though, is I think that what they're doing is such a controversial thing that they're probably still going to get quite a lot of attention, but maybe not so much of it based on their obligations. You know
Well,
what I mean?
and
They're going to
if you
be.
well, I was looking at this too. It was an interesting thing because what I saw is that look, she's had a series of Rahu eclipses going over all of these planets since like 2013 or 2014. These planets have been transiting just backwards through all of this. But the next series, Gemini and Sag, and then Taurus, and then Aries, she's not going to have any major eclipses in her chart for several
Mm-hmm.
years. So we might not hear from her for several years. It could be that things quiet down for her, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not 100% set in stone,
Yeah.
but that's just what I've seen about the eclipses. When you start seeing people who have a whole series of eclipses happening, one planet and then another planet, they tend to have a lot going on in their lives. Like this is a karmic thing that their planets and the exact degrees of their planets are lining up with this pattern of eclipses that are happening. It's not a random thing. It's
Hmm.
very interconnected. And so when you see people that have a whole series of eclipses, that's going to impact them. That's going to be something like an ongoing type of experience. So here, even if we look at Queen Elizabeth's chart, Harry's grandmother, right?
Capricorn rising.
Here's Capricorn rising, and
Right.
here is K2. She's having a K2 return. The eclipses were close to the same degree over here. It was at 20 degrees, just the last one we had, January 10th. So this is also affecting her. Like you said, it's a significant thing that we haven't seen. Her father, King George VI, was given the throne, even though he was the second in line for the throne, because his brother abdicated the throne, Edward, because he wanted to marry his mistress, and his mistress had been divorced twice and
Mm-hmm.
was barely even through her second divorce. And so they would not let him be the king and be married to a divorced woman.
Right.
Think of how much has changed
Yeah.
since then. And so there's a lot of tradition being changed here. There's a lot of shifting in tradition. And Capricorn is the sign that holds on to traditions. Capricorn is the sign that's the rules and the traditions and the formalities, the way it's always been done. And all of these planets lining up here are shifting that. The traditions are shifting, and we're seeing it in live action um, through the charts, through just these prominent figures, and looking at their charts, we can see the world events affecting them because they're very public figures. These are the monarchy. They're
Right.
born into this very public life.
And I would like to mention too that there's a television, I think it's a Netflix original. Anyway, it's called The Crown. It is excellent.
Okay.
And you can see how much personal sacrifice has been involved throughout her life being the queen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't help but wonder how she feels about Harry and Meghan leaving that life. I mean, imagine a part of her is like, gosh, I wish I could have done that. And maybe a part of her is like, I hope she's not taking it personally.
Yeah, I
There's
think
no
it's
way to know. I'm just wondering. Yeah.
well, and I mean, she is going through this eclipse that's impacting her in a certain way with Saturn and K2 and Pluto. I mean, Pluto and Saturn are right on that degree of her ascendant.
Mm,
I don't have the outer
that's
planets
so
in here,
interesting.
but it's right on the degree of her ascendant. So we can see that's got to have an impact on her. So they've moved up a few degrees, but
Right.
here's Saturn at 23 and Pluto at 22. Pluto is sitting at 21 degrees for the past year or so. I mean, it's really been slowly marinating over these few degrees here, 19, 20, 21. Oh, it just seems like it's been at these few degrees forever. And then Saturn creeping up here. It's just, and Saturn, has been impacting and then retrograding and then impacting again right at these sensitive degrees. So yeah, I can imagine that this has been a big process for her in learning how to let go of what her expectations are, for
Yeah.
for her succession and, for her role and whatnot. And it's interesting because when you see, let's look at, here's her Upapada, right? So she has Saturn as her Amakarka, but her Upapada is this Jupiter-Mars conjunction.
Hmm.
And this got really triggered. Now she was, she became queen in 1953, and her father died in 1952. But she started taking on a lot of royal duties, even the year before that, 1951, because her father started getting really sick. So 1951, she has an eclipse on Venus. 1952, she has a bunch of eclipses all on these degrees here on her Jupiter, Mars, and Moon. And then 1953, it starts moving into this axis again, this Rahu Ketu, her ascendant, and it's very close to these degrees, 18 degrees Cancer over here, right close to her Rahu. So she had a whole series of eclipses hitting this when she rose to the throne. So I just, when you look at this with these very public charts and you see how these eclipses have really come in and sort of affected the direction of these really faded, bigger picture lives, you can see these eclipses are seriously impacting on a physical way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not a real simple thing either. It's not like real super straightforward. You have to look at many things to really see it, like so much in astrology.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to piece together clues of how these eclipses work. And, here's an example. There's a book that I like called The Eagle and the Lark by Bernadette Brady. And the reason I love this book is because she has the Saros cycles all listed in there. And the Saros cycles, I feel like, are sort of just these little blurbs that what they do is they give the beginning eclipse. They give the energy of the beginning eclipse. So now all of these eclipses happen in cycles, and these cycles last for like 2,000 years. And these eclipses happen in these series. So they go through their North series and South series, and they go through and they cycle around, and we go through these cycles. And so each one of these eclipses began at a certain time. 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever it is. And what she did is she went back and looked at all of these seed eclipses, these base eclipses, to give an example of how this eclipse may have an impact, because that first eclipses happen in these series. So they go through their North series and South series, and they go through and they cycle around, and we go through these cycles. And so each one of these eclipses began at a certain time. 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever it is. And what she did is she went back and looked at all of these seed eclipses, these base eclipses, to give an example of how this eclipse may have an impact, because that first eclipse that happened in the cycle can also be looked at as a similar energy, even though it's 1,000 years later. So it's really fascinating. But they're sort of just these little hints, you know, they don't really spell it all out. But let's see, this one that Meghan just had, the one that has been impacting them, which I thought was pretty interesting. Let's see, is okay. This family of eclipses brings with it the sudden ending of associations or a relationship, possibly with a younger person. There's a large emotional component as the Pluto is involved and a sense of traumatic transformation. This can be through news received or short journeys undertaken. Well, what just happened?
Yeah, that's
right?
exactly what happened. Wow.
Pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Now, they don't always line up as well as this one, but when you look back and you look at the descriptions of the sorrow cycles and how they really can be seen in the events in the chart, a lot of times they can give an extra little understanding about it. That really just shows, you know, this eclipse is having an extended reach, you know, from like however long ago. Like this eclipse apparently started August 13th, 1208.
Well, you know what's fascinating about that is how just the planets and the eclipses and everything, they go in such predictable cycles, and how all of us are just such an integral part of the unfolding of history and fate and everything. You know, just it makes you feel like you're part of something much bigger than yourself, and you are. And it's not just for like people in the public eye, like the royals or celebrities or whatever, but probably if we went through our own charts and looked back over our own short life in comparison to these sorrow cycles, we could see like how we're part of something really big.
Really big. Yeah, understanding the eclipses more were one of the things that pushed me deeper into astrology. And when I look back on my chart, I have a prominent Rahu in my chart. And when I look back, especially during my Rahu dasha, especially during that whole time period, all of the major events in my life are connected with eclipses.
Now, do you think it's because you have Rahu with the ascendant lord?
It's possible. It's possible. It's hard to say. That would be something really interesting to study and to look at the effect of the eclipses in people's charts that have a prominent Rahu versus people's charts where Rahu is not that prominent, and the different dashas. So maybe that's a research project that we can look at in the future a little bit, along with the other fun ones.
Yeah, right. So many things to do. There's probably so many things to research. And what I really love about talking with you is that you have just such a scholarly approach to things, and you really love to research, and you're very, very thorough. And I think it's going to make a big difference in furthering astrology as a science, as spiritual science. Everybody who's doing research work is really helping. So I just wanted to do this video with you as a treat for my, the people watching. And if you want to contact Channing, she's at ChanningAyersAstrology.com. So do you have anything else to say about it? Or
happy eclipses, and we're not going to have another one for 6 months. So it's always an interesting. It's always an interesting time, and it's a really good time to get in touch with an astrologer.
It certainly is.
What's going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Until next time. Goodbye.